Hello, welcome everybody. This is episode 2 of the Welcome series where we meet ExtremeCloud IQ. So if you're a customer of ours, if you're a partner, a distributor or an employee, or you're thinking about becoming one of those, welcome to you. Everybody's welcome. It's free of charge. Why don't you bring a friend? Why don't you recommend this to somebody else? There's no limit on the number of people who can join, and there's no cost for the training or for the certification and the badge you get at the end of this training. So we've got the usual crew. We're going to hand over to Isaac very shortly. He's going to get going with the training. But before we do that, let me just check in with Claire and Bethany and see whether they've got any reminders or shout outs to you. Come to Claire first. How are you doing, Claire? Anything to remind everybody of?
Hi, Rowan. Yeah, of course. I mean, firstly, I just want to call out how much engagement we had on the YouTube chat in episode 1. Like, that's what we love. That's what we love. We love talking to you guys. So 100%, if you're here with us live today, YouTube chat, let's see that blow up again. If you're watching on demand, please feel free to use the comment section in YouTube and one of the Extreme team will get back to you. And as always, we do have the email address learn@extremenetworks.com if you have a little bit of a more in-depth question, or maybe it's just something you don't want to ask on YouTube. So yeah, we are here to help, and yeah, just looking forward to seeing everyone there today.
That's great, Claire. Yeah, it was great to see that last week. So keep it up, like you say, and you can ask a question. One of the Extreme team may pick it up and answer, or somebody else in the class might answer it. So, and you could do that too. You know, somebody may ask a question and you could answer it. You know, you could help everybody else out who's in this training with you. All right, thanks, Claire.
Do you know what? And it doesn't even need to be, well, I was going to say, it doesn't even need to be a technical question because, yeah, some people didn't know what a biscuit was last week. So, yeah, if you've got any questions around anything else that's not Cloud IQ related, yeah, we'll answer that too.
Absolutely, Claire. And yeah, and clarify, biscuits, which we're talking about, you know, in the US, you call them cookies. Here in the UK, we call them biscuits. I've got a new packet of biscuits here, Claire. I think somebody snuck in and ate the last one. So I've got some new ones.
I did notice that. I did notice. Well, it's interesting how quickly biscuits disappear. But yeah, maybe that's a different conversation.
All right, thank you, Claire. Bethany, anything to shout out to the team here? You know, anything about the exam or any tips you've got? Any reminders?
Hi, thanks Rowan. Welcome back everyone. It was great to see you in episode 1 last week. Just a couple of things from me. So, information about the exam. Essentially, we will provide you with all the information on how you can access it at the end of episode 6. It will be free, online, 40 multiple choice questions, and it will be sitting on our Dojo platform, which some of you may be familiar with. But don't worry, we'll give you more information on how you can access it closer to the time. Now, you may have noticed at the end of episode 1 that we gave you a slide with loads of questions on. These are questions that might appear in the exam. The idea of this is to just give you a heads up, give you a chance to focus your learning or think about them ahead of time. And we'll be doing this throughout the entire series. So get ready to screenshot again at the end of this episode. And again, hopefully it helps you. That's everything from me. Enjoy. Thank you, Rowan. See you soon.
Thanks, Bethany. Well, let us know what you think about that as well. Is it useful if we share the exam questions with you? You know, let us know. Put a comment in the chat window. Does that help you prepare? You know, something new for us. Let us know what you think. Let us know whether that's useful or not. And if you're not quick enough to screenshot, then just go and watch the recording. It's all in YouTube, so you'll be able to get that if you need it. Okay, we're ready to get going in a second. I just want to do one more reminder. Just to let you know that if you're watching on demand, you can turn on the subtitles. You can watch the subtitles in English. You can watch them in your own language. So YouTube does that for you. And another quick shout out to a course that we mentioned last week, which was all about turning on the subtitles, which helps children with their reading. We believe in that cause. We just want to mention it again. I think I'm just going to ask the team to put the URL up here. So have a look at that. If that resonates with you, then just pass it on. That's all we're asking you to do. Just pass on the message. We think this could really help, so we want to keep promoting it. All right, let's get going. Isaac's ready. I can see him out the corner of my eye. So Isaac, why don't you kick it off just recap what we did in episode 1 and let everybody know what we're learning about in episode 2. So team, let's switch over to Isaac. Enjoy episode 2.
Thank you very much. Here we go with week 2 of Welcome to ExtremeCloud IQ. So last week, just as a quick recap, we spoke about cloud. What is it? What's the stuff that people talk about when they say cloud? And we spoke about that in relation to ExtremeCloud IQ. And then we got onto the topic of architecture. And within architecture, we covered a couple of things. We covered the issue of the global data centers, the regional data centers, why this is so important, why we have those, and what each one of those does. And then we listened to a talk and we watched a talk about microservices, and that gave us a really good understanding about monolithic versus microservices, why it's better to build an application that's going to sit in the cloud with microservices. And I hope that gave you a really good kind of platform on which we will build as we go on today. So today we're going to start with this vision. You can see it's a really short module just to set the platform, because sometimes it's not just about all the technology. It's all right, okay, so you guys have this technology, but there's a lot of companies that have got technology, right? So what's the bigger picture? What's the vision? Where are you going with this stuff, right? It's like, Ferrari build cars, Lamborghini build cars, and they've been around for a ton of years. And if you've got a lot of money and you want a really fast car, they are probably cars that go faster than either one of those. But the question is, if you buy one of them and you live in Togo or you live in New Zealand, will you have a support network? Will you have somebody who can fix the car if something goes wrong with it? How will that work? Will the company be alive tomorrow? Will they survive 5 years? Will they be there? So that needs to affect your decision that you make. You might say, I'm not interested in anything other than pure speed. Absolutely fine. But it's good to know a company's vision, to know where, if I'm going to invest in this technology, where is this going? How far is this going? Where am I going to get to using this? If I buy into this company, what is their vision? Where do they want to go? Can I align with this? That's important. And so that's why we're going to talk about this today. Like I said, it's a short module, so we'll get there quite quickly. All right. So this is our mission statement. This has been our mission statement, and it says, you know what? If I was buying something from a company, never mind Extreme, anybody else, and I saw a statement like that, a vision like that, yeah, I like that. When I saw the word effortless, it's like, yeah, I like the word effortless. One of our goals, one of our mission statements is to remove complexity from the networking equation. Networking can be quite complex, right? Let's not kid ourselves. Networking can be quite complex. And one of our goals is to remove that complexity, to make it really easy to do things that previously have been quite complicated to do. So that's the vision statement. Now, how are we going to do that? What does this mean in the practical basis? Well, last week when we were talking about architecture, we spoke about that ExtremeCloud IQ is an NMS, November Mike Sierra, a network management system. Actually, it's a cloud network management system, cloud-based network management system. We manage an entire network from the cloud. Now, that's quite easy to understand. But what is a network made of? A network is made up of different devices. Now, traditionally, the acquisition of Aerohive into the Extreme family came because principally Aerohive worked as APs. They created access points. They were focused on wireless networking. Now Extreme, of course, did brilliant wireless and wired devices as well. So when Extreme took over and started to build, their vision increased for ExtremeCloud IQ, for what became ExtremeCloud IQ. And it's no longer just about wireless devices at all. We have a vision that within ExtremeCloud IQ, within this cloud network management system, we will be able to, or you as a customer, potential customer, will be able to manage your entire network from end to end. So you'll be managing your Exos switches, your VOS switches, your your Fabric, your ExtremeCloud IQ devices, Wing, whatever it is. Every network device that forms part of Extreme's portfolio will be able to be managed from one pane of glass. Now, this is not pain as in P-A-I-N, it's pain as in P-A-N-E. And why is that so important? Because generally speaking, IT people have tons on their plate that they need to worry about. Security being one of the really important ones that they need to worry about. And so they will have systems that they log in on this side to be able to do security, and another system here and another system there, and you'll see them with 4 or 5 or 6 screens, and they have all the stuff all over the place, all these systems that they need to log in, one to manage switches, one to manage access points, one to manage printers, one to manage this. Our vision is to bring all of that management within one window, within one browser. You can get to your endpoint. You can get to any point on your network, to any device, any connected to your device, to your network. You can get to them using one pane of glass. That is going to be incredible. And we're going to be the first cloud-driven end-to-end enterprise to get there. The progress that we've made over the last year in doing this is amazing. We've seen demos. I've seen demos when you start to see all sorts of devices. The other day I saw a demo of one of our very first network switches in the history of the company. That switch was reporting and talking to ExtremeCloud IQ. I mean, ExtremeCloud IQ hadn't even been born when the switch was made, and it's already talking to ExtremeCloud IQ. Think of the tremendous power. We've also been talking about, and if you've been with Extreme any amount of time, you've heard us talking about the concept with analogies of a pilot and a co-pilot and an autopilot. And the vision is eventually to get to a point where there are so many data points, there's so much big data involved in ExtremeCloud IQ that devices can self-heal, that devices can make decisions on their own based on huge amounts of data that we have seen. Now on the screen over here, you'll see it says coming soon on ExtremeCloud IQ Copilot. That already is old. It's already here. Copilot is already there. That's AI and ML. Artificial intelligence and machine learning helping you as an IT person today already, giving you information about your network, telling you, listen, I've seen your network, I'm monitoring your network, I've seen that there's a problem on this access point over here. There's an issue with this one. Either it's constantly overloaded in the morning, or I see temperature fluctuation that's out of the ordinary. You need to address this issue. Proactive intelligence, that's incredibly powerful. So our vision is to be able to provide this tool end to end that will help your network admin team to be able to be more efficient, more powerful in what they do, and do it all from within a single pane of glass. Brilliant. Okay, next module we're calling agnostic. Agnostic. Well, that's an interesting term, and I'll tell you what we're going to do. Last week, our last module, we ended up with a video talking about microservices. I'm going to launch this module by looking at a video talking about containerization. Okay, containerization. Again, G.T. Hill and Marcus Burton, brilliant engineers. It's about 13 minutes long. Let's watch this, and then I'll jump in straight after that, and we'll explore this concept of an agnostic type of network.
Hey everybody, this is GT Hill.
Hey, what's up? I'm Marcus Burton.
Awesome. Always good to see you, man. This is why I took this job, just so I could spend more time with you.
Oh, you were here first. Nice try.
What's it?
You were here first.
No,
nice try.
Took the job working with you.
Oh, I got
Took
you.
the job working with you. I volunteered. I volunteered when no one else would, but that's okay. So you told me to talk about containers today. So when I think about containers, the first thing I think about are shipping containers. And I've been told I'm a bit eccentric. So I built a 3-story high shipping container home. Now I didn't get done with it, but not like 3 containers. It was actually 9 containers. Actually, have you ever seen a picture, Marcus? You haven't been here, but I'm gonna text it to you.
Send it my way. We'll put it up there for everyone.
Yeah, they're gonna love that. So yeah, it was gonna be 9 shipping containers. But when you said, hey, we're gonna talk about containers, that's what I thought of.
Yeah.
Is these intermodal shipping containers that are cool. It's like big boy Lego blocks, and there's nothing better for me. I just think it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's what the technology is kind of named after that. I mean, containers are basically lightweight VMs, but if you've seen Docker, Docker is the container engine, the way to run containers, but their logo is actually a whale carrying shipping containers.
Oh,
I don't know if you've seen that. You've seen it? We'll put it up there
no.
for people as well.
So you said a lightweight VM.
Yeah.
I don't want to assume that everyone knows what a VM is. I don't really want to assume that I know what a VM is. So a VM, a virtual machine is, I can have an operating system and then usually maybe 1 or 2 functions on that operating system. But I'm going to put that along with others on the same piece of server metal, right? So I'm going to have, I'm going to have a Linux doing DNS, and I may have Windows doing authentication, and I can have multiple things sitting on there. So you said containers were like a lightweight version of that. So I can, that's a good teaser. Did I say VMs right? Did I actually define that correctly?
Yeah, that's a good definition.
I need positive affirmation in my life, man.
Great job, man.
You know me.
You're great. I love you.
I used to be a positive affirmation. That was my love language, but I've kind of changed to other things that I won't discuss here. All right, so tell me just a little bit more about containers.
Again, it's a lighter weight sort of VM, but it's basically a way to package together software with all of the dependencies of that software. So, you write some code, and that code requires libraries and frameworks and other sort of software dependencies in order to work properly. So it's basically a way to package all that up into a self-contained unit that's portable and modular, basically.
Okay. So okay. Talking about shipping containers, because I think this kind of works a little bit, is this guy Malcolm McLean. So I did a little research, because I like containers when I started building it.
Yeah.
So this guy Malcolm McLean actually built, which sounds like John McClane. Maybe it's just because I like Die Hard. Best Christmas movie of all time.
I agree.
Awesome. So anyway, this guy Malcolm McLean made the shipping container. So before that, it was just, hey, let's just pile a bunch of stuff on a ship or in the back of a semi-truck. Maybe we didn't have those then, but anyway, so he decided, he's like, let's standardize that.
Yeah.
So that standardization, one of the advantages of that standardization is that, I think we used the word intermodal earlier. The intermodal just means it can be on a ship, a semi-truck, or a train, or any other kind of conveyance. You can put one in the back of a really big airplane and, move it around wherever you need to go.
Did you say conveyance?
Did I say conveyance?
I thought you said... I thought you said conveyance, man. It's a good word.
Is it? Man.
$100 word, at least.
Sweet. PayPal me, brother. All right, so am I on the right track for that seems like what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, I mean, from a developer's perspective, the way that, what shipping containers do for transportation industry, software containers do for the software industry, which is that a developer that's building an application doesn't need to worry about all the transportation, we'll call it, all the infrastructure that his software is going to run on. If he builds it into a containerized environment, it makes it portable. So he builds his software and the dependencies of that software, it's containerized, and then the operation and plumbing of running that container on infrastructure, he doesn't really need to worry about that anymore. So in the same way that shipping containers made it modular, one other way to think about that would be like, Windows and Microsoft and Windows, Mac versus Microsoft apps. I don't know if you got any apps that are like that you can only run it on one OS version.
Yeah, my favorite packet capture application actually runs on Windows only. That's not available for Mac, and I'm a Mac person, so that's a kind of a pain. Now I can just throw money at the problem. I can just buy a $300 laptop, that's running Windows if I want to, or I could dual boot this one, but that's painful.
Right. Yeah. And if you're going to solve that as a developer, you've got to just build the software sort of twice for both OSs, but in an enterprise application, you can't just expect customers to operate both instances. So you got to build your architecture in a way that makes it more portable for both instances. Or when I say both, I mean, really it's any environment that you want to run your application in, whether it's, any of the sort of tier 1 cloud providers, private cloud options, on-prem even, or local cloud options. So containers really solve that problem that makes it portable across different environment. Anywhere that you can run a container engine, you can run a container.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I mean, since I've been here at Extreme, we've went from one cloud provider to actually 3, and it was driven by customer demand. But what I remember happening was one customer said, no, I don't want to use that particular cloud provider. And what seemed like a matter of days, and I'm probably bragging and I'm being all, go extreme, but it is good. We went from one cloud provider to 3 in what felt like, less than a month. And it's the same functionality, right? So the developers are still building new features for these containers. At least that's the way I kind of think of it, these microservices and containers. They're building that while someone else is like, okay, we're going to port that over to, cloud provider 2 and cloud provider 3. So I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. There's another part.
Great. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
There's another aspect of that, like compatibility matrix of thinking about multiple clouds, which is, think about like browser compatibility. If you're building an app that's heavy on front end usage and you got to click through a bunch of buttons and stuff, I mean, the number of sites and apps that work with certain browsers and not with others, like from a developer's perspective, containers are a little bit like if you could bundle the browser and the application all into one. So all of the dependencies, we call it, the environmental dependencies of running that application is what a container is. If you could take your browser and bundle it into the app so you don't have to think about the client-side browser, that's kind of like what containers do from solving the compatibility matrix of operating on different environments.
We need to make sure people out there know that this doesn't actually exist, at least not for our Mac and our PCs.
No, it doesn't solve browser compatibility problems.
It doesn't solve that problem yet. But maybe we're going to start a company, Marcus, you and I. You can be the CTO and CEO.
I don't want that kind of responsibility.
So one of the things I talked about VMs to start with. That's kind of something that's kind of still what I'm most comfortable at least thinking about, is that when I would think about resource allocation for VMs, if I have a customer, maybe I have one customer with 100,000 APs and they're very heavy on events. So from an analytics perspective, they are really event driven. And maybe I have another customer with 100,000 APs and maybe they just need more authentication, right? They have high end usage for guest traffic. I don't know, making stuff up here. But those are really different things. But the problem with VMs that I've encountered this in real life in the past is that for each problem, it's the same solution, which is spin up more VMs. But it sounds like containers, we can almost divert resources and say, okay, we're going to make this container system bigger and this one smaller.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem with a VM is that, or at least the way that it's worked in networking systems is you gotta take the whole VM and you're basically replicating functionality that you don't really need to replicate to scale. But I mean, that's a great point that different environments put different kinds of load on systems. Transportation networks with high transients put put lots of demand on events. But yeah, like you said, guest access networks might put more load on that specific function. And so that's where kind of containers and microservices dovetail together. And maybe it makes sense to even just explain at the next level kind of what, how that works.
Yeah, I was actually just going to ask that. Is I want to, if you can deeper dive into that for me, what are those differences?
Well, and that's why VMs are such a nice comparison, is because people understand VMs. They're basically doing the same thing with containers. Is that a VM, you have underlying hardware that's your computing resource. And for VMs, you install a hypervisor, which is basically a way to abstract access to the hardware. So then on top of the hypervisor, you install, guest operating systems, and then your application and its dependencies and all that. And it's kind of heavy. What containers do is basically you have your hardware in a base OS like Linux or something that can be lightweight. You run your container engine on top of that, and it provides your abstraction into hardware without requiring the guest operating system at all. So you package in your libraries and other code dependencies, and it just runs and accesses those underlying hardware resources, compute, memory, disk, networking, all of that through this container engine without a guest OS at all.
We talked about containers being able to add resources to one maybe microservice like authentication or event-driven, and then maybe we don't need as much anywhere else. Who manages that? What is that? A person? Is that an orchestration? Is that an orchestration manager that hopes to get promoted to an orchestration director, and they're the one controlling all these knobs? So what actually does that, or who does that?
Hopefully not. Yeah, hopefully not. It can be manual, in which case it's a DevOps team. The preference would be for this to be automated. It's still by a DevOps team, but you're building software that automates this, the monitoring of services, but then the ability to scale based on load or the requirements of the application. And that's where, there's what Docker is to containers, meaning it's sort of the open source, the standard way to run containers. Kubernetes is to orchestration. Open source, the standardized sort of way to perform orchestration of platforms that are built on containers using microservice architectures.
So orchestration, I think of the conductor at an orchestra. So he or she, the orchestration is actually, hey, you need more resources. Hey, you don't need as much. It's a manager of that.
Exactly. Yeah. It's containers fail sometimes. And so it's restarting containers that need to be restarted, scaling up or scaling horizontally. If it's distributed compute or something like that needs to scale, you can scale horizontally, and you put that behind a load balancer. So it monitors that whole process, and it runs scripts or other, it uses other tools to be able to kind of control the whole thing. Conductor is a perfect word for it.
Wow. That's kind of awesome. And all this lives in the cloud most of the time?
Yeah, most of the time it's in the cloud. And I think, even answering that question is hard because everyone thinks something different about the cloud, and perspectives about what the cloud is, I think, vary from one person to another. So that's a tricky question to answer. That might actually be a topic on its own.
Yeah, fair point. I mean, I see where we're sitting and how many minutes we've been talking to these fine people out here. So, but I think there's something interesting to talk about cloud, because the more I kind of think about microservices going to containers, and containers are managed by this orchestration service, that we're starting to talk about cloud, and hopefully in a different way than you guys have heard. So I think that's where Marcus and I are going with this. For those of you out there, just I think it makes sense for us to do another video on cloud. Give us a shot, because I know everybody has videos on this. Give us a shot. That it may be a little bit different way to do it than you've seen before. So awesome job, Marcus, as always. You're a rock star, man. I love you.
Likewise.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Love you too. We'll see you in the next video.
Yeah. See you guys.
Quite brilliant, that, isn't it? Yeah. As clear as you can, as can be. So, Containerization makes it possible for us to put these different bits of code, to separate them all out and run them as individual pieces. And that is so powerful, because here is where we get to the point of being cloud agnostic. Our solution, ExtremeCloud IQ, is not limited to running on the AWS platform. So we have customers that say, hey, we're in the retail business and we love what ExtremeCloud IQ does, but we would feel really bad about giving more of our retail business or giving more of our business to AWS, to Amazon Cloud. I mean, they already hurt us, isn't it? Don't we have anybody else? And the answer is yes, we do. Because of the way that ExtremeCloud IQ is architected, because of those microservices, that containerization process that we followed to build ExtremeCloud IQ, it means we can take the code and we can put it onto Microsoft Azure and run it there as well. And if that's not good enough for you, we can take the code and put it onto Google's cloud and run the same application in Google's cloud. And if that's not good enough for you, we can even do the same functionality on-prem. We can do the same stuff on-prem. If you have your own cloud, we can do that too. So when we say that Cloud IQ is a great application and it runs in the cloud and everything, because it's been architected by really clever people in a really clever way, it means we are not tied, our customers are not tied to using one cloud provider, take it or leave it. No, they have choice, right? Our customers have choice. It's not, it's only Amazon, take it or leave it. No, we give you the choice, and you as a customer have the ability to do that. And this becomes extremely powerful, and this differentiates us a lot from our competitors that tend to build for a particular platform. This alone is one of the reasons that we take on plenty new customers. The fact that you are not tied into any vendor. There have been many customers that we have won at Extreme because we don't try and tie you into such a way that you can never leave our platform, right? That would be crazy to do it. So you have choice. Choice is important. And I hope that this little module where we've spoken about agnostic, how you can have toasted cheese or you could have toasted cheese and tomato. It's your choice. The solution, the ExtremeCloud IQ, works the same on any one of those platforms. That's clever building. Next module we're going to talk about is quite a long one, and we're going to go in and dive straight away into that, which is security. So I'll bring up the slide so you've got a couple of minutes to read it, and go get yourself something to drink, a glass of water, whatever you need. In fact, let's take a little break over here. We're going to take a 1 minute and 30-second break on this one for you to stretch, for you to get your little Apple thing going on your Apple Watch saying, oh, you've done 1 minute away from the computer, whatever it is, and then we'll come back and we'll jump into security. 15 years ago, if you had told someone that most big corporates would be using the cloud, putting their data into the cloud, people would have called you crazy, absolutely crazy. That will never happen. That I worked for a company was like, that will never happen. Never. Data has to be stored on our servers, on our premises, and it shall never leave, and that's how it is, end of conversation. 15 years later, which company isn't using cloud for some or other service? Think about it. Office 365. How many of us are using Office 365? Huge amounts, right? Many of us. How many of us, for example, use Gmail? It's a cloud application. How many of us take all our photos and put it up into iCloud? It's normal. It's not a big deal. We've begun to trust it. We've seen there's always issues, but the convenience is so high of having your data in the cloud that security, of course, is so important, but it isn't at that point where people are not adopting it day in, day out. It's become part of the way that IT works around the world in all large companies. We understand this. But security is always a concern. So let's deal with this because it's an important thing and we can't run away from it. We have to deal with this. So I am sure that every company will say, any company that has a cloud solution will say to you things like, oh, your security or the security of data is very important to you. Of course, Extreme is also going to say something like that to you. We take your data the security of your data very seriously. The integrity of the data is very important. But there's something that's very important for us and for you as a customer to ask. These are the types of questions that you should ask. Think about when you buy a car, a motor car. All motor cars that are sold in Europe, and I think in America and most countries in the world, they have to undergo certain tests. For example, think about how do you test the safety of a car? Well, you have to have a rigorous set of tests, and they put these crash test dummies in the cars, and they got to drive a car at a certain speed and crash it into a concrete barrier, and then they have all these data points that they have to measure, and at the end of those testing, they will give you a score, and they will say, well, this vehicle has a score, a rating, okay? And of course, I guess, I'm not too sure, but if it falls below a certain level, they might say, no, it's not allowed to be sold in Europe. I'm not too sure. It might be. But it also gives the customers who are interested in buying that car, that motor vehicle, it gives them confidence when they see a high score. And if safety, security to them is very important, then they are going to make the decision to buy a car based on that. That's going to be one of the values, right? And they're going to have integrity from that process. They trust the process. Every car gets tested in the same way, equal set of standards. It's then easy to make a decision based on that score. So how do you measure software? How do you measure solutions like ExtremeCloud IQ? How do you go about putting in a score? And I'm glad you asked that question because I'm going to answer it in the next couple of slides. But having a process in place gives confidence that what you are buying is and has been tested to a certain set of standards and has passed or exceeded those standards. So ExtremeCloud IQ is hosted, depending on which platform, either with Amazon, with Microsoft, or with Google. And Extreme Networks will obviously take advantage of the all the security and the compliance capabilities that those operators, those three operators that I mentioned, have to be able to get business from federal governments, from the military, from whoever. They have to take many procedures, they have to comply with many standards, each one of them, just so that they can stay in business. So Extreme Networks, just by having Extreme IQ, Extreme Cloud IQ hosted on there, already becomes secure to a certain level, certainly because of what these guys implement. But it's not enough, right? It's not enough. If you go into a building, into an office building, you can't just walk around anywhere. You go to reception and they're going to give you an access card, but that access card is not going to give you access to every floor. That would be very insecure. Imagine, no sir, you can't go past reception without a card, but I give you a card that allows you access to everywhere. You wouldn't do that. And it's the same thing with Extreme Cloud IQ. Those operators have their own standards and procedures in place, but so do we. So it's no good saying, oh, well, we follow all these things, or they follow all those things, so it means it's secure. No, it just means those standards are implemented at that point, at those data centers. But you still need to be secure. So we depend on them, but we add additional measures, additional controls, including things like firewalls. Right, that's really important. Firewalls to control what? To control incoming and outbound traffic. That's important. You need to have that. And of course, some of these guys also have that in place. So we place another layer on top of that. What about threat detection? Look, you're always going to be attacked. Always. That's just the way it is. But you're a fool if you don't try and detect those threats before they happen. Or, if somebody is testing you, they might not hit you with a flood immediately. They might try a little bit. What happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? Ooh, no one's responded. Let me try this. Let me go bigger. Do you understand? So it's important that you do threat detection to pick up these things really early. Malicious, unauthorized behavior, right? Why is that happening? Why are we getting so many requests? From that there's something going on over here. Unauthorized system access, brute force attacks, people constantly trying passwords, to try and get in. Distributed denial of service attacks. The most common form of serious attack is DOS attack is a denial of service, when a particular computer or server, whatever, hits you with absolutely thousands of requests within a few seconds, trying to knock that server offline so that they can gain access into the root. Well, nowadays systems are pretty good against that. But what about a distributed denial of service attack? That's when not one, but hundreds, thousands, or hundreds of thousands of machines launch an attack at you, at trying to knock those servers offline. Well, you need to be aware of that. You need to have industry-leading tools to try and prevent that from happening, and using the firewalls to block that from happening without affecting everybody else. Right? It doesn't. In the old days they used to say just unplug the network cable. It's like, yeah, you do that and you knock off everybody, all of your customers as well. So you see the challenge that it becomes. What about updates, right? Because we, as I mentioned in episode 1, we always putting in new updates, new features. Every month there's something new happening in Extreme Cloud IQ. Well, you need to test those updates, right? When an update is done, when the code is done, then that needs to be tested, penetration testing, scanning to check if there's any vulnerability, if by installing this patch that works absolutely okay, if you put it into a production environment, is it still secure? I'm sure you've heard of something called a pen tester. Not this pen, right? It's not a pen tester like this, although there might be that. Penetration testing, somebody whose speciality is to try and penetrate through systems, through software systems. All the updates that we apply into the production environment have to go through a proper staging process for penetration testing to make sure that in a production environment they will still comply to all the standards that we have, and they won't accidentally allow some or other bug to get through the system that opens a hole for someone to get through. So these are things that are very important to do. You might have heard of the term OS hardening, operating system hardening. What does it mean? If you're not familiar with it, when you buy a machine, let's say you buy a laptop from Microsoft, right? From whoever, and it's got Windows on it. That machine, when you plug it into the internet, is probably going to come back and going to say to you, oh, I found 17 updates, 2 security patches, whatever. And it's going to ask you to do those installations before you continue, right? And that's important. You should always do that. Many years ago, when I ran a software business in South Africa, or an IT business rather in South Africa, I would sell Microsoft products. And Microsoft products like an Exchange server or whatever, you would install it and it would literally leave all the ports open on your machine. And you had to go in manually and close all the ports. Nowadays, they actually have reversed the process. They close everything and you have to go and open what you want, which is a lot safer to do, even though it means you need a little bit more configuration. But hardening means you religiously apply all the security updates and patches to the operating system when it comes out, right? I think Microsoft has something called Patch Thursday or something, where they release these updates once a month or whatever, and apply them to the system, and it patches your servers. So we do the same thing. We have all the servers that are used whenever within our environment. We always do that. We patch them. We harden those. So those are important. What about daily backups? We do daily backups of production network. So, the code that's used, all that information that's used to generate the software for ExtremeCloud IQ, all of that is done. We do backups of that, and we store all of that data in an encrypted state. So no one can steal it and, make it available because it's all encrypted. Without the encryption keys, you can't decrypt that data. We also take precautions and measures to secure access to the actual computing infrastructure with features like, virtual private cloud, NAT, TLS encryption, reporting tools, automated password protection. There's a ton of things that we do on top of what Microsoft, Amazon, and Google do, right, to protect their data centers. Strictly limiting access to the cloud infrastructure to only a small number of people within Extreme Networks that are DevOps engineers, trusted DevOps engineers. You can't let every person within Extreme Networks have access to the infrastructure. That makes no sense at all. It has to be a small group of people. And then on top of that, you have to have audit trails. So think about a financial system like an SAP, SAP. Imagine if that didn't have audit trails on them. What use would it be? You need to know who authorized which transactions, which IP address, how did it happen, when did it happen, all of that information. So all of those things have to be integrated into our process to create ExtremeCloud IQ, to keep it updated, to keep it patched, to keep it adding new features. These things are important. This is what we say to people when they think and they say, well, what about security? Well, security is not just one thing. It's not enough to say Microsoft, is handling all the security. No, it has to go beyond that. For additional security, our cloud networking solution, ExtremeCloud IQ, also encrypts the data traffic while it is transiting between your network, a customer's network, and the regional data center. So think about this. If you have a data center, if you're a customer and you're in Germany, then the regional data center, because of privacy laws in Germany, mean that the data goes from your office, to the regional data center in Germany, where it's stored, and it never leaves Germany. But even in that transit process, the data is encrypted. It doesn't just flow openly. Think like the security cars that move money. They don't drive them on bicycles. They have proper security cars where the money is inside to protect it. It's the same thing with your data. We don't just move open data, we encrypt it. These things are really important. We also don't retain any data traffic generated on customer networks. Remember, we're not interested in reading your emails. That's nothing to do. We're not interested. We're looking at data points, meta points. Think about that analogy of that Formula One car, where they have hundreds of data points, sensors telling the people that make the decisions when to pull the car in to change tires or fuel, or when it's overheat. That data point, that's the stuff that we collect. Actual data, we don't retain any of that type of data. So, having said all of that, let's talk ISO, International Standards Organization, a body based out of Geneva, Switzerland, and they have standards for absolutely everything and anything. Let's take something simple. Let's think about shoe sizes, right? What's a size 7? What's a size 7? What constitutes a size 7 in Europe, in America, in Japan? Is it the same thing? No. So what makes a size 7 in Europe? What makes a meter, or a kilogram a kilogram? ISO is the body that looks after things like that, all the way up to computer security. Remember the example of the vehicle that goes through a series of tests to determine the safety rating of that vehicle? Same thing with computer security. So I used to get very confused with all these ISO numbers because firstly, I could never remember them. But let me make it easy for you. First of all these ISO numbers that we're going to be talking about here, they all start with the number 27, right? 27. So that's it. Don't worry about the first part of the number. Just remember it's 27. If we talk about it, they're all 27. What's really important is the next three numbers. So let's talk at the first one that we've had for a number of years. The first International Standards Organization certification on our ExtremeCloud IQ. That is the ISO 27001, the first of the 27 category, 001. It's an information security standard which specifies, now this is important for you to know, the Information Security Management System, ISMS. It's one of these things, it's good to know. The important word here is system, okay? System, Information Security Management System. And that is important because to understand what this is about, you have to understand that it's not one particular thing. It's not, if you do this, then you are certified. The 27001 is not a single policy, but it is an entire set of policies, standards, and procedures that govern how we and I mean, when I say we, it could be any company that attains the certification, how we comply to these particular policies, standards, procedures within ExtremeCloud IQ. Okay, other companies, whatever, and it implements how we need to follow these things. It goes down to even how we do background checks on our employees. But here's the thing, it's not just about all the procedures. You also have to actually show evidence. I mean, you've got to show them that you follow these procedures, but you've got to have evidence for them to see. Okay, so what is your HR policy regarding employees? How do you do the background check? Show us. We want to see the procedures that we want to see in operation. Do you understand? So it's not Mickey Mouse. It's not like anybody can just walk in, place a couple of ticks on some boxes and stamp, there you go, pay us $100 and you got your certification. No. It's not that. You have to comply, and then you have to provide proof. And in the case of 001, you're talking about 114 different, call them categories, call them controls, 114 of them that you have to go through, comply with, show evidence of, before you get to that point where you can get that certification. Now, that is the equivalent of you purchasing a car because of the rating that it's got. You see, oh wow, look at the rating that this car had. It's got the second highest or the highest rating of all cars tested in the US this year or in Europe this year. That gives you confidence in the integrity of the process. That gives you confidence that were you to be involved in an accident, the probability of you surviving that is incredibly high. The same thing applies to this particular ISO 27001. This is what we're talking about. Let me just show you over here. Let me show you. Look at some of these controls that I mentioned. Security policy, governance, human. Sorry, I'm reading off the screen over here. Asset management, access control, encryption, operation security, communication. Remember, 27001 doesn't actually specify you need to use this encryption. It just says you should use encryption, a strong encryption. Incident management, right? Incident management. If you have an incident, it needs to be reported. It needs to be documented so that, you know, when they come to do the audit, there, we had an incident. This is what it was. This is how we dealt with it. This is the importance of getting an ISO certification. It's not just so that you can put a rubber stamp and say, yes, we've got all of that. It signifies a lot more than that. So we will end today. We've come to time up on this episode. I hope that so far this has been interesting for you. It's a heavy module, but I hope I've tried to make it interesting for you and that you found, value in this. Next week, we'll continue. We'll do a little recap of this, and then we'll continue from this point onwards. There's another couple of slides. I don't know how many that we are, but it's important not to rush through this, even though it might seem a little bit dry. It's better to do this properly so that when people ask us, we know. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being with us for this time. We'll see you same time, same place next week. Cheers.